President Trump has had it with allegations he knew about Jeffrey Epstein's abuse of underage girls. He's now demanding a federal investigation into some other big names connected to Epstein.
Attorney General Pam Bondi says it will be done with urgency and integrity. The case has taken on a life of its own years after Epstein's death, with both political parties pressing for investigations into who was associated with Epstein. Fox's Caroline Shively has more now from Washington.
President Trump says he's ordering a new federal investigation into alleged ties between Jeffrey Epstein and prominent Democrats, including Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, Reid Hoffman, J.P. Morgan Chase, and many other people and institutions.
Jeffrey Epstein is an increasingly and enormously powerful man, even in death. He is like a human hand grenade, and both sides, both camps, keep trying to toss him onto the other side and hoping that it explodes.
This week, the House Oversight Committee released 20,000 documents from their investigation, some of which mentioned Trump. House Speaker Mike Johnson said he's scheduling a vote next week on a bill to force the Justice Department to release what they've gathered. It's a move the White House fought for months.
The American people just deserve the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth as it relates to the Epstein files that Donald Trump and his minions made a big deal about for years, but now all of a sudden that they're in office, they're trying to bury this information.
Trump has denied any wrongdoing and says he broke off the friendship years before Epstein pled guilty to soliciting a minor for prostitution.
They're trying to attack the president. They're trying to manufacture some sort of hoax that he had something to do with Epstein, and it is absurd.
Epstein and his associate Ghislaine Maxwell are the only people ever criminally charged in the case. Epstein died in prison before his federal sex trafficking trial. Maxwell is serving a 20-year sentence. In Washington, Caroline Shively, Fox News.
Well, joining us now is Melissa Michelson, political science professor at Menlo College. Melissa, thanks for joining us.
Sure thing.
Talk to us a little bit about what you make of this push by the president to look at Democrats. Is this a pivot or a deflection?
I think he's trying to deflect and trying to say, I'm not the one that should be worried about this. These Democrats like Bill Clinton and Larry Summers should be worried about this. That said, I don't know that it's going to work because it does perpetuate the Epstein issue being in the news. It means that investigations will continue. And what we've seen in the past when Republicans have tried to deflect away from demands that Epstein files be made public is that they inadvertently come up with more information that sometimes implicates the president. A really good example of this is the famous birthday book and the message with the outline of a woman's body that has what is allegedly the president's signature on it. That was part of an investigation by Republicans that they thought was helping them deflect from the president. And so I think this is an attempt to deflect, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that will work and move the attention away from Trump or prevent more information about Trump's alleged involvement with Jeffrey Epstein from coming out.
Yeah, I mean, you're making a good point there. Even actually a few Republicans part of this kind of release of emails this past week. Can you talk a little about how they might be even joining Democrats? And is this really a bipartisan issue of getting these files released?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. It's not just that Democrats want things to be investigated. A lot of Republicans want this to be investigated as well. And I think when we see that House vote next week that Johnson has announced, we'll see a lot of Republicans joining Democrats to demand that all of the Epstein files are released. Because this is coming not just from members of Congress, this is coming from the base. And for years, there have been members of the public, including many Republicans, who want to know the truth. How many people were involved with Epstein and who is responsible and who should be prosecuted. They're thinking about the survivors of all of this abuse. You know, it isn't just about politicians and the men who are involved. This story is about the girls and young women who were involved, and the public on both sides of the aisle wants to know what really happened, and they want justice for those survivors.
Yeah, talk a little bit more about that potential link between our president of the United States and Epstein and the impression it's leaving on the American people.
Well, it's not a good impression, you know, and Trump's approval ratings are already quite low, but I think we've seen over the years that Trump has been in office that his supporters are willing to give him a pass and to let things go. But there are certain kinds of things that maybe they wouldn't be willing to let go. And so the danger for the president, if evidence does come out that links him to Epstein, that shows that somehow he was involved, this is maybe the kind of issue, if it involved the sexual abuse of young girls or of girls, that might be the sort of thing where even the president's base turns against him. So it's a pretty dangerous position for the president to be in. At this point, it's all allegations, it's all unknown. That's why the investigation is continuing. But I think that there is this ongoing pressure and that there is this possibility that it could further hurt the president's standing, even among members of his own party, is a huge risk for him.
Yeah, a lot of finger pointing really in all issues at this point in our political era. But what about next week, this House committee set to vote? Do you expect that to go in his favor or again? Tell me a little bit about what you expect from this vote.
I fully expect the House to vote to release the files. I think the fact that there is a discharge petition already tells you that. So if 218 members of the House have already signed this petition saying we demand a floor vote, well, 218 votes, that's how many votes you need to pass something in the House. So it's definitely going to pass. And I think when people know that it's going to pass, that's when you see people jumping in. So I think actually the margin of victory is going to be a lot larger because a lot of folks are going to want to be on the record on this as saying, I was there, I voted yes to release the information and get to the bottom of this. So I think it's going to be an overwhelmingly positive vote to release the files.
I just have one more quick question for you. Obviously, this kind of sets a new precedent where the president is suggesting a new investigation and Attorney General Pam Bondi jumps in immediately. How does this kind of separate the independence of the entity of the Department of Justice and, setting this new precedent of the president?
Yeah, unfortunately, this really isn't a precedent. We saw just recently that he thought he was sending a direct message, but it appeared on Truth Social where he directed Pam Bondi to start investigations of some other folks like James Comey. And we then saw Pam Bondi and her Department of Justice indict James Comey. And so this isn't actually new. It is new in terms of before this Trump administration.
Right.
That didn't happen, that there was separation. But under this president, we have seen over and over again, and this is just the latest example of the president seeming to use the Department of Justice as his personal group of lawyers who can go after his perceived enemies and not a separate and independent branch of the federal government.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Melissa Michelson. Great insight there, political science professor at Menlo College.